my ministry would be cheering up the people here, even though I wasn't being cheered up. But there was a little man that I met, and he was sitting quietly and straight ahead, and I said, hello, and he says, hello. He says, people don't usually talk to you here. And I said, well, they do. You have to chat, but they don't unless you say hello. And a lot of them got used to saying hello after they see you. But
so, Mrs. Edwards, if you can, before I begin, I just want to make sure I have this down. What was your maiden name before you were married?
Smack.
Oh, it was.
Yes.
Smack, like it
Yes.
sounds? Oh, great.
Smack, yeah.
Okay.
All right. So the little man said, gave me his name, and he said, my father was a Choctaw Indian. And I hadn't heard of the Choctaw Indian from Mississippi. And I said, oh. And I never got if he actually was born in Mississippi, but he was a Choctaw Indian. And he said, my father could speak the Choctaw language. And I said, isn't that interesting? And he lived over on Shafto Road. And I said, oh, Shafto Road. I said, that was a black neighborhood. Oh. And so I said, it also was built by two Indian families, the Cherokee and the Lenape, married and built the town. Oh, all right. Well, he agreed with all that. And I said, and there's a little church over there. The town is just about disappeared, but there's a little church from Reevy Town that's over there. And they've moved it a couple of times because the Monmouth County landfill had to make a new entry to get into their property. But they moved it. They can't destroy it. It's keepsake.
It turns out that that's about 3 miles from my house. I passed it today on the way to pick you up. I know,
Really?
and I also I write for the Two River Times newspaper.
Oh, really?
And I did an article because a woman came to the Red Bank Library to talk about her Reevy ancestors.
Yeah.
And I can't think of her name. You bet you know her. But that's a very famous area, and they do claim Choctaw and Lenape.
Yeah, but it was a Cherokee and Lenape that started.
Correct.
All right, so I said, isn't that? And he was married for, I forget how many years. He had 50-something. And he had 3 sons and 2 girls. And the last conversation I had with him, he said he was so happy because his daughter-in-laws had come to visit him, and one a strange person, and I said, oh, they're trying to marry you off, are they? And he laughed. He says, no, he was just happy to see them. They had come to see him, and he did go home. And so I lost contact, but I thought it was so interesting to meet this man that had this Choctaw Indian name.
Did you know any of the Reevies from that area?
I knew some of them. Now, that's another thing. Some of the slaves, some of the Indians were enslaved.
Yes.
And their name was Reevy, Reevey. And there was a man, forget his first name, Reevey, that was head of the Indian Nation. And I met him. My great-grandfather's name was Reeves. And so I said, were the Reeves and the Reeveys related? And he told me no. But I found out later that this Mr. Reevey didn't like black folks. And he was black. So, how do you figure? I don't know.
Well, that group now, they call themselves the Sand Hill Indians.
Yes.
Because they have their compound where their family, one of the places on, I think it's part of Long Branch actually, where they think they originated.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of intermarrying, you're exactly right.
Oh, yes. Once an Indian, they had intermarried, but they weren't Indians anymore. And I'm going backwards, but the Lenni Lenape Indians, I met the last chief.
Wow.
And I'm very friendly with one of his granddaughters. And she, of course, only believed that she was Indian, and now she knows that she's Indian and mixed. But I met him. I'm an old nurse, and I worked at Monmouth at that time, and there was some kind of electrical wiring or a lightning storm, and he burnt his hand.
Wow.
And so he had to be in the hospital. So I do, and I don't know. Of course, I don't know where all the pictures are now.
You were at Monmouth Medical Center?
I graduated from Monmouth Medical Center.
Where I picked you up, that hospital across the street from the train today.
Oh.
That's where she worked.
That's where I started.
Ah.
I graduated School of Nursing from there, and then I worked there for 10 years.
Wow.
And then I went on to rest at home with and raise a couple of kids, and then I went to work at Riverview. And I worked there for 30, 40 years.
Wow. Did you know, by any chance, one of the radiology doctors named Dr. Whalen?
Mm-hmm.
That's my father-in-law.
Really? Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. It was Whalen, Dee Dee, and Reed,
Yes.
the three of them. They're all passed now.
Yeah.
But I married his daughter, Pat. We're divorced now. But that's so funny. And my children were born in Riverview, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Isn't it?
With Dr. Gilmore, do you remember that name? He was an obstetrician.
I remember the name.
Yeah.
I don't remember him.
What a have you been to that? Well, you have been. How much they've changed?
I retired from Riverview in 1999.
Wow.
And of course, I went back to the hospital, and they put me on the same floor that I worked for 40 years.
Unbelievable.
Yes, yes.
The setting, I don't know if you've ever been, it's right on the Navesink River. It's just beautiful. Riverview, it's beautiful.
Well, I was in rehab one time, and I guess I had a little stroke, and I had to go.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know I was going to make that kind of noise. I'm so sorry.
I went to rehab, and the nurse says, "Oh, let me move you to a better room," because she knew I was a nurse. And it was right there. You were looking right down the Navesink River.
Beautiful.
And I was saying to my roommate, "We're on a cruise." You look like you're just on a cruise.
That's right. It's a beautiful location.
Yeah.
Wow. And so were you just a general practice nurse, or did you have a specialty?
Med surge.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you were in the OR a lot?
No, I took care of medical and surgical patients.
Oh, okay.
And for a time we had detox on there, so nobody liked detox, so they gave it to old Mother May.
Is that what they called you?
Mother Amanda. Yeah, and to the fact that one of the I'll just say one of the doctors because I can't think of its practice. Heard one of the doctors that knew me real good, and he heard them calling me Mother Amanda. So, oh, there's Mother Amanda.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah. Now, do you know? Are you looking up a lot of the history?
So, yes, and I'll tell you how that happened. I'm part of a couple of groups, but the main group is the Monmouth County Genealogical Society.
Yeah.
And we have a subchapter of African Americans, mainly from Red Bank. I don't know if you know a man named Charles Lawson.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, you do? Oh, good.
Mm-hmm.
And so with him and some other friends of mine, I've been looking into the history of enslaved people.
Mm-hmm.
And so tonight, and I'm glad that Dee Dee came down, I'm giving a talk in Tinton Falls at a house to tell people that they're going to be surprised how many slaves were in Monmouth County because white people don't want to believe it.
Oh, well, this is very true. There was a genealogy, because I belong to the Jersey City genealogy.
Right.
And I would go to the one that met in Eatontown.
Yes.
And I was talking to one lady, white lady, and I was saying about the enslaved people. Oh, there wasn't any slaves in New Jersey. I said, oh, yes, there were. Yes, there were quite a few. In fact, Monmouth County was one of the first people to buy land here, and you could even get more land if you had more slaves.
Absolutely.
Head right.
Yes.
And when we were growing up, again, I was in Hudson County, but even down here, nobody taught it to us. Not, I don't think, because they were mean. They didn't know.
Yeah.
They didn't know.
Yeah, and they just didn't want to teach it, I don't think.
Probably true.
Yeah.
But one of my little goals or my missions is to let people know that we have to face this, and it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But my belief is that if we face it and acknowledge it, maybe we can start to figure out how to get past this nonsense that we're going through.
Yes.
Maybe. It might take another 100 years, but okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So do you trace your own family back to an enslaved person?
Okay, my great-grandfather. I don't have any pictures with me. My pictures are all home, and as I speak, they're being packed up, and so I can go through them someday when I get settled.
Good.
But my great-grandfather was supposedly a slave. Now, I don't consider him way back slave drudgery work and all that. There was a law in 1804 that if you were born of a slave mother, you would be free. Well, he was born in 1820, and so that made him a person to be put down in the Black Birth Book that he was born. And also his wife was born in 1922, and they were both from Monmouth County. So I assume that
1822?
18, what did I say, 19?
1922. I was doing the math in my head and it didn't compute.
Yeah. Okay, 18. And so we know that he worked for, well, when he was, they'd had to be enslaved for 25 years a man and 22 years a female. And so that would make him 45.
And what was his name?
Reeves, Charles Reeves.
Oh, he was a Reeves, okay.
Yes.
In Middletown, do you think?
Yes.
Okay.
And he worked a lot in Lincroft on Brookdale Farm and all.
Right.
And so when he was, he worked for George Crawford, who owned a lot of property around. He said, if you work for me for 25 years, I will give you a house and a little piece of property. So he did.
Well, let me interrupt 1 second. Tonight, where my talk is at the Crawford House.
Oh, really?
The one in Tinton Falls.
Yeah.
So I bet they're related
And,
somehow.
Are you? Is that house near the Shrewsbury genealogy?
Yes, it's right off where Sycamore Avenue goes into Tinton Falls.
Okay, and that's where the what's his name? Oh, I have to get my glasses on.
Better late than never. You guys, anybody want coffee or anything?
Oh, he's
No, I'm fine, thank you.
You're fine? Coffee?
Fine, thank you.
No? Okay.
How about you?
Juice or anything? Ice cream? Nothing?
Wow.
Yeah,
You
want...
treat everybody good around here.
Well, yeah. I'm a
No,
volunteer. I'm looking for things to do.
No, thank you very much.
Okay, okay.
Do you want some ice cream?
no.
Okay.
No, 'cause
Yeah,
dinner's
supper's coming up
soon,
anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
All righty.
Okay.
Oh,
Well, while I have it out, that's the old house they moved. Now, this old house was over by where Christian Brothers is.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Now, this was logged rolled across a field to where it is on Middletown Lincroft Road. It's not there anymore because somebody bought it.
Yep.
And it didn't have a foundation and it couldn't be rebuilt. And he also gave him a little piece of burying ground. But it's near, if you, in 1850, there was a black fellow who bought property, and I think it was all from the Crawfords. The Crawfords bought had mostly Lincroft and out in Homedale.
Well, I wonder if that's the black burial ground next to St. Leo's
Oh,
Church.
yeah.
We just, not me in particular, but my group just cleaned that up a couple of
All
years
right,
ago.
All right,
Yeah,
and
the
then
man who was there.
Right.
And then,
Oh, you were there. Okay, great.
And okay, Monmouth College and all.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yes, and that was very interesting because a lady who worked for the preservation committee was a volunteer at the church, and she saw some kids going in with flags, and on
For Memorial Day.
and there was a
Hey,
teacher
Chris.
who also worked there, and this is through the group, and that's how they.
How are you doing?
And it actually, I think the way it sort of was, there was a young man who was like an Eagle Scout,
Yeah.
and that was his first project,
Yeah.
and then it expanded. So that was exciting. So now this clipping you gave me, you said I remember the Courier newspaper in Middletown, January 6, 1972.
Yeah.
So are they calling you Morty
Unless it's
in this?
That's my mother.
Oh, your mother.
I borrow- I
Okay.
might borrow
That's-
these.
Oh, this is a picture of your mom.
And that's the
Okay.
the
You returning the
grand
magazines?
daughter of Charles Reeves.
Wow.
3 in here.
Okay.
And she loved to do articles. So this is one of the articles. One lady from church gave that to me since I've been here.
Tom
It's
Clancy?
all on
So did your mother pass on a lot of these stories to you?
Oh yes, yes.
Oh, you
Okay,
read
good.
It seemed like Charles and Hannah Reeves had
Which
11
one's better, do you
children,
remember?
and
I don't
Amanda,
remember which one.
which
Yeah.
was my grandmother's name, was the 11th child. And
Against all-
so, of course, my mother knew a lot of the
Yeah.
Yeah.
stories
I
about the
like
11
these,
children from her.
And here's a name I know, Garrett Hendrickson. That's a Dutch name. The Dutch folks had a lot of enslaved people
Yeah.
all over Homedale and Middletown. Homedale, where I lived later on in life, was once part of Middletown. So the Hendrickson were definitely slaveholders.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's great.
So this would be your great grandfather.
My great grandfather.
Okay. Did you know him?
No.
Oh, he was gone.
He died in 1900.
Okay.
Oh,
So
oh,
you
oh,
suspect he
yeah.
might have been
What
enslaved?
was it about?
Well, he was
Was it a
born
book or a movie?
after
It was a book.
Yeah, book.
The 1804 law.
1804
Yeah, I
law,
Right.
and he
what it's
had
about.
to.
I guess this is a spy
He
film.
had to be in.
I love
what
the
was the
jets
word?
with the missiles
Um,
and then the
Apprentice.
jet.
Yeah, he had to be a servant for
Yeah.
until he was 25.
Yeah, for 25
I like
years.
that kind of thing, you know.
So he was.
Cool.
Wow.
That I know.
Anyway,
But he wasn't.
I'll borrow them
I
later.
called the
He's like
slave
in
that
the
had to go out
field.
and work in the fields.
Oh,
He was
boy.
born of them. Now, on his death
I'd love to
certificate,
get rid of this.
I found his mother and
You have a little
father's
cold?
name.
Huh?
You have a little
Wow.
cold?
But
Little column?
Cold. You have a
uh,
little cold?
Well, more
Susan
than that, but
Oh.
and
Okay. I
forgot
hope
the
you
father's
feel
name.
better soon.
But the name was on the death certificate.
And so his father was a smack too?
Talk to you
No,
soon.
no smacks.
Oh, what
Oh.
is here,
Don't come
though?
into this.
Oh, okay.
We're getting some
No.
interest.
So I'm sorry, your great
He's the
grandfather's
Reeves.
name was a Reeves. So do you think that his father, who you don't know,
pretty good.
remember the name, was he also in Middletown?
and it was
Yeah, he was a
interesting.
slave
Okay, so
because
They're
they didn't
finding
mention.
They're finding,
They mentioned him,
sites and
but
Yeah.
we didn't know him when
Archaeological.
Charles was alive.
Yeah. It was interesting.
Wow.
You see.
Yeah.
And also, I have the obituary of him
All
and
right, we'll see
Hannah
you later.
Reeves.
See you later,
And
man.
I
Oh.
started my search in Middletown for the marriage certificate of Charles and Hannah Reeves and couldn't find it, and finally found it in one old book that was put away when my mother moved from Lincroft to Luffman Towers, and it never had been looked into, and there
Wow.
was the marriage certificate of Charles and Hannah Reeves, and in 1850, and they were married in Homedale.
Yep. And do you know if they were part of the Hendrickson enslaved group or?
No, I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. So I'm gonna. One of the things I'll do for you is I'm going to try to put all this together after we chat, and I'll mail you what I find if there's anything new.
Okay. The only thing might be interesting with Charles Reeves, in 1900 he died, and his obituary, and that gave the name of his mother and father.
Okay, and that's probably in maybe the Red Bank Register or the Asbury Press, maybe.
Well, I got it from looking up. No, I got it from the obituary.
Yeah, but I wonder, it was probably printed in one of those local papers.
No, I don't believe so. There was a lot of information. They had good information in the old days in those papers. No, I got it from. I guess you'd have to go to Freehold and look up the obituaries.
Okay, right. I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
So if I may just walk you back a little. So your maiden name was Smack.
Smack.
And-
Because Maud
Reeves.
Reeves.
Married.
No, Norman.
Oh,
But
okay. I'm sorry.
That's all
I
right.
jumped your gun.
That's all right.
Mhm.
Amanda Reeves married a Norman,
And Amanda was your grandmother.
my grandmother, and Norman came from Philadelphia. And so when they married, she was living in Philadelphia. My mother came back to the area when she was about 12 or 14, because her mother was sick, and the mother sent her to live with I call them the old aunts.
Right.
And she stayed there. And so that's how she got to know, well, she knew her mother from being the daughter, and then coming back to the house where practically all of them were born. That old house that I showed
In that
you.
picture, right.
Yeah.
So do you remember, was Maud her formal name, or was that a nickname?
That was her formal name.
Okay, so she was Maud.
Elizabeth Norman, who was the daughter of Amanda Reeves and, what was his name? Norman. Grandpa Norman. Okay. But also Norman.
Okay.
And so then the Smack came in. Maud married Bill Smack from Maryland,
That's your father.
my father.
Right.
So that's where the Smack comes
Okay.
from.
Do you know your mother's birth date, roughly?
12/29/06.
Okay, and when did she pass?
She passed in, I believe, 85.
Okay, and how about your dad? Do you remember his dates?
He was 10/21, either 1899 or 1900.
Okay.
And then he died when he was 75, so it was 1975. We'll choose the 1900 that he was born.
So
Well, he
do
was
you know
70.
about the enslaved people on his side, or just from your mother's side?
Oh, well, I know of a few. Now, his father, I'm assuming, I don't know if he was free or not, but they did have enslaved people because he came from Maryland.
Of course,
and,
yeah.
They did have them, but then there was a free community of black folks coming from Maryland.
Were they on the Eastern Shore?
Eastern Shore.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've been there.
Hmm. And the funny thing about the Smacks, my I guess it had to be cousin, lived in Atlantic Highlands, and it was sort of a place, run-to area for the people coming from Maryland to stop at his place.
Wow.
And so my father did come up and was staying with, it was Lambert Smack. And now we're going to jump a little bit. Queen Chapel Church over in what was Navesink, but it was going down the hillside. Was where my father met my mother, and there were people over called the Brittinghams, and there was a few other names, and I didn't know why they were so together, but they were evidently relatives from Maryland.
Wow.
The Brittingham, I know, the Brittingham came from the same area that my daddy's people came from. And I go through so many setups of families, my chart for pedigree chart for the Smacks, Reeves, then go this way. But I have them all in my head, and sometimes I get so confused about them. Then I go to my husband's side, which was a different area entirely, and we can't get him mixed up with any of the folks that I'm talking about now. And there definitely was slavery. My husband's people came from, his father from Georgia, but they came from South Carolina. And my name was Edwards. My husband's name was Edwards. His people, his grandfather changed the name from McCallum to Edwards.
Wow. And what was your husband's first name?
My husband?
Yes.
Doc.
Really?
Yeah, you may have seen his truck. He was a garbage man he probably rode around in your area.
Oh, I'm
too.
sure he did, yeah.
We were a private garbage collector.
Wow. And what were his dates of birth?
He's 9/5/29.
Okay. And when did he pass?
92.
Okay. So, if I may, did you have children, the two of you?
Mm-hmm. You have 3 children.
Okay.
No, but it should be. Oh, you're recording it.
Yeah.
You don't have to. That's nothing to write down. I had 3 children. Or we had 3 children: Douglas, Lynn, and Edwin. Douglas was born in 71. Lynn in 74, and Edwin in 64.
Are they still around the area?
My eldest lives in Maine. That'd be mine to have to call Maine. Lives in Maine. But he just got married when he was about 50.
Good for him.
So he doesn't have any children. He didn't want any children. He has 2 stepsons. And my daughter lives in Middletown, lives in the old house. And in fact, she did not do any of the business work. I did it all. And you know how the Lord said you have to be ready morning, noon, and night?
Yes.
And I wasn't ready when I got sick, and she took over. And she's the one that's handling all the business. And my son Edwin lives in Middlesex County, Somerset.
Right.
And he's a school teacher, and he has 2 children. She had 4 girls, so I have 6 grandchildren, only 1 grandson out of that.
Wow. So when you were growing up, did your people talk about the enslaved ancestors, or did they not want to talk about it?
Well, my mother talked about a lot of stuff. I really didn't know too many of the 11 children. We'll put it like that.
She was one of the 11?
No.
Oh.
Amanda Reeves Norman was one of the 11.
That's your grandmother?
That's my grandmother.
Right, okay.
And my mother knew a lot about the families. And she knew I'm ashamed that I don't know too many more of my relatives, but my mother knew all the little children of the children.
Sure.
And we would visit, and my mother would be the kind that I don't care if you were a criminal or if you were the priestly man, she associated with everybody.
It's great.
And she was a person that would listen, a listener, good listener, and that I got some of that from her listening, being a listener.
It's a gift.
Yeah. What else? Now, since you know about Tinton Falls, you know about the Mr. Lewis. I don't know if it was Colonel or what, came up from the Barbados and
Lewis Morris.
started the
ironworks. Yeah.
Yeah, and from that, when that stopped, he let most of his slaves go. So they were located, let's say, some of them in the Wayside area. And I did know a lot of the names, but I don't know. And you know who knew that whole side so well was Dr. Parker Sr.
James Parker.
Oh, no, not his senior, junior.
His son.
Yeah.
There's a street in Red Bank called Dr. James Parker.
Yeah. And they had to pick the worst street in it.
Although it's been
Yes.
fixed up a lot.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Do you think you can trace your relatives back through that Lewis Morris enslaved group?
No.
Oh, different. Okay.
No, I think mostly those people came from, as I say, the Wayside area.
Right. But did you know some of their descendants years later? Or did you just know the story about them?
I just knew the story.
Right, okay.
I can't even say I knew that family. Now, on the, and I can't really tell you too many things about the Reeves, except what I was told, and my mother told me about the Reeves.
Do you know Claire Garland? Do you know that name?
I know of her.
Yeah. I've met her, and she is part of the Sand Hill Indian group,
Yes.
and she's a Reevee way back when.
Yeah.
And she knows a lot of that history,
Yeah.
too.
Now, there's a lot of disagreement with her and the other. There's a couple of fractions. I met her one time at the Episcopal Presbyterian Church in Red Bank.
Right.
And I was always going to get back to her, but I never did.
She seems to favor the Indian side of her heritage.
Yeah.
I just think her head's all
The
okay. But she did go down.
Yeah, there's a couple different things. Now she would be, she's not the Lenny Lenape. She's with the
The Choctaw.
Cherokee.
Cherokee. You're right.
Cherokee.
Yeah, that's right.
And they had a lot to do in Neptune and Asbury Park.
Right.
Now also, the Undertaker, F. Leon Harris, I believe he may have been related to the Garland end.
Okay.
I didn't know, but he looked like he could have been an Indian. He had that facial look about him, and to the point that I called him Uncle Leon, and his wife Pearl Cobb went to school with my mother. My mother went to Leonardo.
Yeah, Leonardo was the high school before Middletown.
And
Yeah.
so we're almost running out of people for the Leonardo High School, but
Uh-huh.
we still have our,
Yeah.
I guess, hopefully reunions.
So you don't think, or do you think that you have Indian heritage anywhere in your family line?
Oh, well, that's another story. You look up the name that the Indian had. I mean, not Indian had. The enslaved person had.
Right.
Either it could have been the name of the owner or the name of the owner's wife.
Right.
And Mr. What's his name?
Maintenance, please call
there's a
third
man
floor.
in-
Maintenance, please call the third floor. Thank you.
In Freehold. I can't pull his name out of my head. Maybe think we both were at the meeting at the school about the cemetery, and I told him, I said, I haven't found any name Reeves of any of the owners and all that, and he says I haven't either. So there's a possibility that the Reeves could have been part of the Reeves.
I think you're right.
And so I was trying, this is one of my big things I was trying to do when I got sick, to try to figure out, because when you're looking up a lot of this stuff and they're saying, it could have been Reeves, and they put the name Reeves in there. So it's very possible. And to look at my great-grandfather, I wish I could show you a picture of him. He looks like he was an Indian.
Wow.
But it doesn't have any reference to Indian families when you're listening to the reading of his life there.
So when you did your research, you took a lot of notes. You said you have a genealogy chart at home that you've traced your ancestors?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's only back to him. And you couldn't go any further because you have that block.
Yeah.
Where you can't. The only way that you could go a little further is to find obituaries but they didn't start printing out obituaries until into maybe the late 1800s.
Right. Wow. Do you have any family Bibles with sometimes the Bibles put in birth dates and marriages?
Not from the Reeves, no.
Okay.
No. And so I don't know if he had. Now the only thing I'm thinking, his first son was Isaiah. So I said, okay. And when I'm going through my genealogy group, there was Isaiah in Manalapan. I said, oh, there's his son. But it's the same age as him. So his brother could have been Isaiah.
Right.
And there's also to tell you that I found about 6 or 7 Reeves family throughout Monmouth County that are about the same age as my great-grandfather.
Uh-huh.
But I haven't gotten any, there's nothing saying if these, now I can't even write to you. I was going to say I send you the name of all the Reeves that I have, but I don't know.
Well, when you said that your daughter is packing up your things now?
Yeah, but they don't know where they pack.
Oh boy.
The things that I need. Also, in our group in Jersey City, this was one of the ladies that I guess introduced me to the Genealogy Society. She was a computer person, and we were going to do the 1880, the Black history of 1880 of the blacks in Monmouth County. And so we're taking each county apart. Well, that book I have.
The Black Birth book?
No.
Oh.
I have the Black Birth book.
Yeah, I have that too.
That doesn't include too much.
I know
the
you were
census-
working on the
the-
census from
the
1880.
Yeah.
The census of 1880.
That takes a while, right?
Yeah, but that's all done.
Oh,
of
good.
The 1880 of Monmouth County.
So maybe when you get out of here, maybe I'll come and we'll talk again. Or I'll take you to lunch. How about that?
I hope I ever get out.
You will. You look pretty good, right?
I know.
Well, I'm saying I don't have a home to go back to.
Oh, okay.
In order to because I can't take care of myself.
Right.
And I was in a situation where everybody would go to work and I would be home by myself.
That's not
and
good.
they say that's not.
No.
They wouldn't allow me to go back to that situation. So she had to find some way to care for me outside. So I'm sitting up here with all the heat and everything, and she's worrying about getting fuel for the house. So, but that's the history. But all my history is back there, and well, the the blacks of Monmouth County in 1880, it gives you the families, because my grandfather's even in that, because he died in 1890.
Now, do you remember who wrote that book? Or is it a book that you
Oh,
did?
no,
They
that's the
compiled,
one
they
that was
did it.
compiled.
Oh, okay. So it's
And-
not a published book.
No,
Oh, it's just
no,
for the family.
No, it's just for, well, I guess if I had been in Deverson, to have it copied, and we could have sold some books,
Sure.
but we didn't.
Do you know, well, may I ask you your birth date too, so I can,
10/28/32.
32, okay. Are you aware of the name T. Thomas Fortune?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's on the Parker Avenue.
Correct.
And he's a newspaper man who had
Former slave, yeah.
former slave.
So do you know my friend Gilda Rogers? Do you know her?
I know of her.
Yeah. So I just went to, they had a dinner a few weeks ago to raise funds. And that house is almost restored. It's going to open up. I'll take you by it. And they're doing a great amount of work for the history of not only the African American community, but the cultural history of that whole area.
Yeah.
And boy, they're wonderful what they've been doing.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
And this house stood on that property for years, and you could just look at it, and nobody was allowed to go in it.
Did you know him? Well, no, he was
No.
gone before you were born.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, he was very prominent and he actually used the term Afro-American in the 1890s before anybody used that term. And he published papers in New York, and he knew a lot of the famous people. Quite a guy.
Yeah, and they said he rode his bicycle sometime from Red Bank to New York. You want a little water or something?
I'm okay.
Oh, okay.
So now your daughter who is living in your house now.
Mhm.
Which one is she? What's her name?
Theodore Lynn Edwards.
Okay. What does she do? Is she a nurse?
No, she is. Well, she graduated from Centenary College. She was a banker.
Wow.
And then when banking got really rough, and they said you had to.
Excuse me.
No, sure.
You had to sell a number of bonds or a number of
I
this,
know.
and she said people didn't have the money, so she left nurse.
Okay.
She became a licensed aide, and she graduated to be aide plus. So she worked on the intensive care unit.
Wow.
And she got injured.
Oh
from
no.
pulling and tugging on the patients, and so she's been on disability for about 3 years now.
Wow. And now is she married or she?
She's divorced.
Okay. So does she use your name?
She
Her.
uses Edwards.
Oh, okay. Right.
Her last name was Forte, Forte.
Yeah. Well, when she calls you, just tell her I would certainly love to talk to her.
Okay.
Does she know a lot of this, or are you the person with all
I'm the person.
Yeah, I
that
thought
knows
so.
most of it.
Yeah. I am the same in my family. My kids know a little bit, but
Yeah.
not enough.
She knows enough to know about the great-grandfather, and I have a book at home somewhere. It has him and his wife and all the children.
Well, I hope she keeps care of those, right?
Well,
they don't get
I-
lost when
I
they.
hope not, because I made albums for a couple of years ago for everybody.
Oh,
Everybody
it's
has
wonderful.
their own album. So I hope she's put all that away. So that, and like, a lot of people, it's morbid. When you die, have all these pictures out. So I have pictures that, she could put up when I die.
No.
Put up. Anyway, there was something else I wanted to write. Let me put these on again. Oh, a fact that when we were talking about Lewis coming up from Barbados, they called an area in Middlesex County Little Barbados.
Wow.
Did you know that?
I never heard that term, no.
And I don't know where to locate that information. I was told that, but
I'll see if I can find it. Yeah.
Little Barbados, because evidently a lot of slaves were brought up to that area. And also the fact that slaves were not just sent to the islands, which they thought a lot were, but slaves actually came into Perth Amboy.
Correct.
And also into New York.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And very little information that you can find about Perth Amboy.
They don't want it. Well, they didn't want it to be known.
No.
Yeah. No, I'm aware of that.
Yeah. And a lot of the slaves, you have the manumission book,
Yes, I've seen that.
and there were a lot of slaves that were manumitted, and you can find names from that go back.
Yeah.
Um,
It's very hard to find the names because in a lot of the wills, when people wrote their last will, they just said, my slaves go to my wife or my daughter.
Mhm.
Sometimes they named
Named
them,
them,
but
yeah.
sometimes not.
but the ones that were manumitted with in the book, it has they were manumitted on a certain date from the owner, and sometime if you can go back to the owner, you can trace back more, and I wasn't able to do a lot of that.
Did you find any of your family in the manumission book?
No,
All right.
I didn't even find them in the Black Birth book.
Well, they got here later, it sounds like.
But all of them, when that was started in 1804, each county was supposed to keep track of all the slaves that were born after that, and so there were names in there of slaves, children that were born after that.
Right.
But I never did find my.
Now, an interesting thing, and maybe I can help with this. What religion were you brought up in?
I was. My mother was Methodist.
Okay.
And my father was Methodist.
So as far back as you know, Method?
Yeah, but I only go back to my mother's religion. I don't know what. Now, okay, the Charles Reeve was Baptist.
Right.
Because they say he went back and forth to church on Sunday to the Baptist church. And the Baptist church, I don't know if when you go to Red Bank and you can't go down Broad Street, you have to go down when you come in from the bridge.
Bridge Avenue.
No, not Bridge Avenue. You come in, make that little U-turn, Riverside Drive.
Right,
You come
yeah.
in, and you just have to go around and then you go back out.
Yep.
Okay, that on that corner
I know it.
was a little church.
Still there, yeah.
Yeah, and it's now, I forget what it is now, or was, but after and then I don't know if they moved over and they became the Baptists of the Calvary or the Baptists on Shrewsbury Avenue.
Or Pilgrim Baptist.
Pilgrim
Yeah,
Baptist.
Pilgrim is where Charles Lawson, I think,
Yeah.
is part of that
Mhm.
that group. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I do know that little church. Now, when you were in Middletown, did you or anybody in your family go to the Clinton Chapel?
No.
Okay, so
No.
did you know the Heath family?
Yes, I know them very well.
Because
Was
Clinton.
Bertha Heath.
Right.
was a member of our genealogy group.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why we go to the farm in
Yeah.
June.
And you know where the Clinton Chapel is,
Yeah.
back there, yeah.
And like a lot of my friends say, oh, there are 2 black churches over there. Now, why are they there? And I said, well, there's a black community over there. Because people still go to the Baptist church on Church Lane.
Right.
And the congregation is small, but they still go.
Sure.
And and there's a little congregation that goes to the Clinton.
Now, were there any churches back in your neighborhood?
Black churches?
Yeah.
Not that I know of.
Okay, so you had to travel a little bit.
Yeah, but we went to the Lincroft Chapel,
Right.
and only because my mother didn't have a car to take us over to Quinn Chapel, because she would have taken us over there. But we went to the Lincroft Chapel.
How did you get there?
Walked.
Did you really?
I
Yeah.
lived in Lincroft.
When you were in
I
Lincroft.
grew up.
Oh, okay. I thought when you were in Middletown after
No.
you got married. So you didn't get to Middletown until you were married.
Married,
Ah,
yeah.
okay, of course.
And then Lincroft Chapel turned into Lincroft Community Chapel, and then in 58, 59, a group came, from Illinois, the majority of them for Bell Lab, and they wanted to have a sect. And so they picked the Presbyterian.
Wow.
So we became Presbyterian in 1960.
Wow. Changed the whole thing over.
All around, yeah.
That had to be controversial.
Well, they seem to accept it, you know.
Yeah.
I wasn't brought up learned the history of the church. Somebody's out there. Oh,
Well, the Presbyterians are from Scotland, of
Yeah,
course, originally. So wow.
yeah.
So let us do this. I don't want to take advantage of your time.
Oh, that's all right.
Because we have to go to this other thing.
Mhm.
Would you mind if I come back and talk to you someday again?
Oh, just let me know.
I'll call you, of course, ahead of
Okay,
time.
All right.
And because you're just a wealth of treasure of information.
But as I said, it's terrible that it's too late for me to be prepared.
Well, you've done a pretty good job. But I will tell you, too, that this tape that I'm making, I'm going to make sure that Dee Dee gets it, so she'll have a record for the genealogy group.
Oh, okay.
Because what's interesting, just these little things that you say might be clues for somebody else's family.
Yes, yes.
You know, and you never know where it leads.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's
and your memory's terrific.
why we I enjoy the blacks of 1880 of Monmouth County.
Oh, sure.
Because there's so many names, because she, besides printing everything, she's put the different towns, and
And who did that?
Ellen Morris.
Okay, do you know her?
I don't believe she knows her, but Ellen, I think she's still alive, but she was, and I don't know who she was, but she was great with computer.
Is she African American too?
No, she's white.
Oh, okay. And lives close, you think?
Well, she still lives in Eatontown. I haven't
Oh,
heard
okay.
of her dying.
Okay, good.
Ellen Morris.
And was that book published? Or did she keep that just for herself?
That's the one I have.
Oh, okay.
Mhm. And we never did publish it. We should have. Would have, all that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there are people that would have been interested in that because of old names.
Of course. And it's a big project, and it takes money, and, you know, people are busy with their lives. They don't necessarily think about that.
After I figured, let's say, going to the computer now, they could do 200 or 300 pages at one time,
Yeah.
and that's your book. And she printed out what the different jobs that the different people did, and there were only a few odd jobs, but there were a lot of jobs, and so she had a lot of that written out.
And you could cross-reference some of that with the census records, and you could figure out where people lived, and yeah, it's valuable.
Yeah, and that's how I got together with all the Reeves that are in there that were around my great-grandfather's age.
Wow.
And in there, my mother did tell me that a lot of the relatives named their children after their sister or brother's children.
That's right.
And like my great aunt, that the last one to die, that lived with us, was Hannah Jeanette. And so there was another Hannah with another initial name, Hannah G. And so that was good to see. If you saw this name and then saw the same name over in this Reeves family, they had to be related some kind of way.
And you have to be careful not to mix them up when you do the genealogy.
Yeah, oh, true, but they're all dead.
Yeah, they did. They named after relatives a lot. Wow. Great. Okay.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yes, your syllabus.
Oh, very, very
This
nice.
was the program syllabus from our conference
Wonderful.
that we just had in Pennsylvania.
And so this is, and you just went to this weekend?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So,
Oh, you'll love that.
Oh, yes.
yes.
Okay. So let me turn this off, and let me get a picture of the two of you.